Hello and welcome to another episode of 73 in the RGV, the podcast where we talk all things amateur radio right here in the Rio Grande Valley and beyond. I'm your host Dave, call sign Kilo India 5, Delta Oscar Golf. And I am back on the active roster after spending a few days on the injured reserve, physically unable to play list. It's good to be back. In today's episode, we are diving into a really important topic for every ham operator, whether you just passed your technician exam last week or you've been on the air for decades. The amateur radio band plan. Now, before we get rolling, let me tell you a quick personal story. Even before I got licensed, one of the first things I did when I was first interested in amateur radio and getting in there and studying, I grabbed a copy of the ARRL band plan. I studied it, highlighted it, and kept a copy of it nearby because I wanted to understand where I could legally and responsibly operate. Now, for me, it was not just about memorizing the frequencies. It was about getting familiar with the culture of ham radio and knowing where the action happens. And honestly, that gave me a huge head start once I got my call sign. So whether you are brand new to the hobby or just need a refresher, today's episode is going to help you feel more confident about navigating the bands, understanding the plan, and making the most of your operating privileges. The first thing to know is that the Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC, sets the official rules on which frequencies amateur radio operators can use, and that's called the allocation. But the band plan, well, that's a little different. The band plan is more like a community agreement, a roadmap developed by organizations like the Amateur Radio Relay League, ARRL, and it tells us where specific modes are generally found, like voice, CW, Morse code, digital, repeaters, satellite, weak signal, and so on. Think of it this way. The FCC gives us the lanes on the highway, but the band plan tells us which lanes are for fast cars, which are for slower traffic, and where the bikers usually ride. Now, you can technically go outside of it in some cases, but it makes life smoother and friendlier if we stick to it. Now, since many of you are new operators, then that's what this show focuses on. And again, not to take anything away from anybody else, but let's start with what the technician class license gives you. On HF, or high frequency, you get access to some limited slices of the 10 meters, a little bit of the 40 meters, 15 for CW, right? That's CW, carrier wave, Morse code, right? And a very, very small portion of the 10 meter band for phone and digital, which is pretty cool. Digital is pretty cool, and we'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. But your real playground, again, technician class, your real playground is going to be in the VHF, very high frequency, and UHF, or ultra high frequency ranges. And that's the 6 meters, the 2 meters, and the 70 centimeters. That's where all of that sits. Now, for many technicians here in the Valley, 2 meters and 70 centimeters are where you're going to spend a lot of your time, especially on the repeaters. Right. Now, let's break this down. Let's break it down. Let's talk. And I mentioned this before in the previous episode, but let's break it down again. The 10 meters, or the 28 megahertz range, technicians can use phone, voice, right? Key up the microphone, phone, at 28.300 to 28.500 megahertz. Now, that's a great place to start playing with HF when the conditions are right. I mean, you can hear stuff here. I've picked up New England, states in New England, states in the Pacific Northwest. It crawls down sometimes to like Arizona, that far south. But then on the opposite end, I've heard Brazil. I've heard Southern Africa, the continent of Africa. And every once in a while, where I'm at, I will pick up Oceania. Okay, Asia. Okay, and then there's others just down the road. They'll pick up further reaches, and again they'll pick up more. Australia, the other side of Australia, and again China and further out. But it seems to be one elusive one. It keeps eluding all of us down here in this neck of the woods. Is Alaska. For some reason, we just can't hit Alaska, or not too many of us are able to. But If you can, let me know. When you do, let me know. All right, 6 meters, 50 megahertz range, often called the magic band. It opens up periodically, great for DX when it does. 2 meters. All right, 2 meters, 144 megahertz to 148 megahertz. That's the home of local repeaters, or the simplex calling frequency, 146.52 megahertz, and lots of other nets. Now, the 70 centimeters, the 420 to 450 megahertz, another repeater-rich band, often used for local emergency communication and experimentation. And remember, within each of these bands, you will see suggestions in the ARRL band plan for where FM voice usually happens, where digital lives, and where CW operators can hang out. It's less about hard rules and more about avoiding chaos. And if you look at it, it makes sense. I've got the link to the band plan from the ARRL. I've got it down below in the show notes. So if you're listening on a podcast, it's in the show notes. And if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube, it's down below. So again, just keep, again, it's avoiding chaos. You'll see it. It's all nicely drawn out and it's really cool, but it's about avoiding the chaos. Here in the Rio Grande Valley, we've got some really active repeaters on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Check it out. Again, visit the websites to get the frequencies and the codes and the tones and all of that. Also, you can visit radioreference.com and again get the local frequencies. And if you've got a mobile rig and you can store more channels and more frequencies, channels is what I call it, but frequencies, hey, and you drive, why don't you add in wherever you drive? And maybe that way you don't lose any contact between here and there. You're always hitting a repeater. You're always able to talk to somebody. And of course, if you're new, and one of the best ways to learn is just to monitor. Turn on that radio, tune in, frequency, get it all set in, dialed in, and listen to how the nets are run. Listen to how the nets are run. How operators call CQ throughout the day, and who listens and who responds and who doesn't listen and how they respond and how they hear you, but they may be in the other side of the valley, and how they hear you might be because they're on a different repeater, might be different than the repeater you're on, and the person just right down the road hears you clearly. Again, there's so many variables out there, and that's the beauty of amateur radio, the variables. You'll never know who's on the other end or how they hear you or how they don't hear you. And of course, the other thing is etiquette. Again, everybody follows a certain type of etiquette when you're on the radio. Again, minimize the chaos, avoid the chaos. And again, they're not hard rules, but as mentioned, we're trying to avoid the chaos. So there is some etiquette that comes into play. And of course, don't be shy. Most of us down here are more than happy to welcome a new voice on the air. So if you find yourself down here, and one of the things is like in my case, when I'm active and I'm healthy and I'm listening in and I have no problems, then I will listen in. But individuals come in, turn on, try one time. I'm in the middle of something, I can't respond, and they give up. And I was like, no, hang out here for just a little bit longer. Somebody will answer. Somebody will answer. All right, let's do a quick recap. The Federal Communications Commission tells us the hard rules, but the ARRL, the band plan from them, gives us a friendly guide on how to share the airwaves. As a technician, you've got limited high frequency or HF access, but you really have the great access. The greater access is on VHF and UHF. Use that. And knowing where to find certain modes like CW, sideband, SSB, FM, or digital will help you have more successful contacts. And here in the RGV, as I mentioned, there is no shortage of activity, especially on 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Now, it's time for some action items and things you can do this week, right here, right now, to put into practice. One, you can download the ARRL band plan PDF and keep a printed copy in your shack or your go bag. And the link to the band plan is in the podcast show notes. And for those of you on YouTube, that link is right below. Next, try listening to one band outside of your comfort zone. If you're usually on 2 meters or 70 centimeters, why don't you tune into 10 meters and see what's going on over there, or 6 meters, just to see what's happening, if anything, on that 6 meters or 10 meters. Don't forget, remember we talked about propagation, so you might not hear something at 10 o'clock at night in the 10 meter, but 10 a.m. in the morning could be all lit up again. So don't forget that. It also varies when you listen, when you tune in. Next, program your radio with at least 5 frequencies in each band you are licensed for. That way you're ready to jump in without fumbling through a manual. All right, friends, it's time to wrap up this episode of 73 in the RGV. I do hope today's dive into the amateur radio band plan gave you more confidence and a few ideas to try out this week. Now, here's my final challenge to you. Check into a local net. Even if you don't say much, just to get the feel for it, just get the feel of it. Then, when you're ready, throw out your call sign and join the conversation. Call CQ. Again, get out there and start talking to people. And this is where the learning really happens. Now, before I close this episode, I do invite you to visit all the local amateur radio websites, and like the Rio Amateur Radio Club, the Stars, the RGV Amateur Radio Club, and join the nets. They've got nets. Join them. And again, all those links are in the show notes on the podcast, on the Apple Podcast, and also on YouTube down below. And listen, folks, thank you for tuning in. And remember, the more you know about the band plan, the more fun you will have exploring this amazing hobby. So until next time, this is Kilo India 5 Delta Oscar Golf saying 73 from the RGV.